after you've checked your area and it's free of any abridgment, rocks, leaves, organic material, and it's satisfactory to have the turf rolled out, it's helpful to have a area lined already, sometimes with paint or markings, as you can see, because what we want to do is strategically line the turf up so that when we roll it out, we really shouldn't have to move it into any kind of position whatsoever, because the backing is abrasive, and what we want to avoid is dragging this across our finally finished putting green surface and disrupting any pebbles or any other, creating any undulations. So try to line it up as best you can so once it's rolled out, you do not have to move it again. Now that we've got the green rolled out and in place, we're going to let it sit here and stretch. It is a little bit of a cloudy day, but we're going to let it just sit here and relax and let any of these roll lines in here just kind of work themselves out. Obviously we've got some extra, so we're going to create a cut along the outside perimeter area here so we can free this larger piece out of the way, and we've got some ability to work. Now we're obviously not going to want to cut in too far, because in case we need any wiggle room to move the turf, we can do so. But as I said, it was important to try and line the turf up on your line originally so that we do not have to move or drag, and as you can see, we're right there on the line. So once we get the outside tabs cut off and the excess cut off, we're now going to start marking with our chalk and draw out the footprint of where our putting green is going to ultimately be. Now that we've got our green rolled out, it's been sitting in the sun, stretching, relaxing. Obviously we've got a little bit of shade here. Next thing we're going to want to do before we actually start doing any significant cutting and marking out the green, I like to mark where the holes are. So obviously we can't see the holes, so what I like to use, especially when we draw out our green, is just kids sidewalk chalk. The stuff's fantastic. It'll leave all of the marks that we need to indicate where the holes are, and then drawing out the green. But if we don't like what we drew, we can erase it and then remark it. But I want to see where the holes are so that as we start to draw out the shape of our green, we know where everything is. So what you can do, and another important tip I highly recommend, take your shoes off when you're working on your green, because shoes and boots and sneakers, you're going to pick up rocks, mud, dirt, any other particulates, and they'll get right into this green material, ultimately affecting the ball roll, causing it to jump or skip. So we want to try to keep all that off. So just take your shoes off. And what we want to do, if we kind of remember where the holes were prior, so what we're going to want to do, if you can kind of remember where they're at, so there's one there, it kind of makes a hollow sound, if you will, when you're tapping around. You can use your foot, but try to just kind of tiptoe. We don't want to step in it and dislodge the cup at all. So now that I know that it's here, I just want to mark that. After I've marked all the holes, now I can draw my shape out a little bit better, because obviously I can't see the spray paint underneath the green. So I'll mark all these out, and then I'll start drawing on the green and show you what that's like. Okay, so we have all of the holes marked out, and now we're working on the shape of the green. And again, you can't see where your spray painted lines are underneath, and so what we're going to do is, you can see where I was drawing it with the chalk, and it's a good idea to step back off what you drew occasionally, just to kind of get a better idea to see if your lines are straight, or if there's any little hitches or anything in here. So I actually drew in too close on this one, but that's okay, because the chalk just disappears or is faint, and I can follow my line. So this allows you to draw and redraw several times. You can do this with the customer present, and you can talk about any of the shapes or anything if you want to have it undulate a little bit more if you don't like any of the lines. So we're going to clean this one up down here. You can see it jogs out a little bit, and I'm not particularly fond of this little curve right here. But again, do this in chalk, do it as many times as you need to. Important tip though, again, wear your socks, but important tip that if it rains or gets wet or moist, all of this goes away, completely disappears. So if you're trying to beat the weather, try to get this drawn and cut prior to any rain. Otherwise, everything that you marked will disappear. Okay, so we're still working on our shape, and something that you can do that's helpful when you get around to your outside edges where you can get some movement on the turf without really disrupting, you can pull this back and you can kind of see where some of your lines were previously. So I'll use something like my toe, I'll mark it where I can't pull it back any further, and then what I'll do is I'll just take the chalk and I'll draw or make a couple of dashes so that I know on my next one, and I'll draw a couple more in here, I'll know that now I've got some dotted lines or some connected dots that I can follow to get to where I need to ultimately have the shape that we had originally. Because obviously we spent some time with the homeowner and got the shape that we wanted. But again, a lot of the times too, we like to try and maximize our putting surface. So these can always change a little bit, but again, this is why we do this in chalk. And because the green obviously will look a little bit different when it's down versus when it's spray painted on the dirt.